Good morning, Matthew. Nice to see you again. So Thomas Abraham James here, CEO and President of Pulsar Helium Inc., a company registered in Canada. And as the name suggests, we are a dedicated helium exploration and development company. And we have assets in North America, in Minnesota, the USA, and also a secondary project in Greenland, both of which are primary helium assets. And we're doing our best to get them towards production as quickly as possible.
Well, hello, good to see you again. Right, helium, not too many people know too much about it. It's slightly esoteric in most people's eyes. Tell us what it is used for, please.
Yeah, sure. Look, helium is it's used in more or less everything. So it's the unsung hero, you could say. Everybody hears about helium party balloons. That's the first thing I like to get out the way. That's roughly about 2% of market share. So there's not too much value in that one. But also it's an industry, I think that it's a bit of a frivolous waste of what is an incredibly valuable and critical product. So to give you an idea of its key uses, it's mostly in the tech industry, particularly in the manufacturing of tech items. So something that we've all got, telephones, televisions, even our vehicles, anything that's got a computer chip in it. So helium is used in the manufacturing of semiconductors. That's one of the key uses, and something that we're hearing more and more about is particularly when nations after COVID are looking to secure their supply chains for manufacturing at home, USA, Europe, semiconductors. To do so, they need helium. Another big use is MRI scanners. So, starting to get to that age now where I probably have to go and get one of those for myself. But to get the magnet to superconduct, it needs to be bathed in liquid helium. And so a lot of it goes there. Manufacturing of fiber optic cables, new computer hard drives to make the disks spin faster, require less energy, leak detection, you name it. So really, and the big one also is space. So when you see, say, a NASA spaceship there on the launch pad about to take off, you've got the gas coming out the side of it. There's a good chance that that's liquid helium starting to boil at negative 268 degrees Celsius. So it's used in the space industry as well. So really, tech and a lot of applications that we're all familiar with.
Right, and it's colorless, odorless, hard to find, and you need to know what you're doing. So tell us about the team.
Yeah, I mean it's almost like looking for nothing. I guess it's colorless, odorless, and so on. But the key thing is it's inert, which is if you look at the other lightest elements, hydrogen definitely not inert, whereas helium is. So that makes it safe, non-toxic, non-hazardous. But with the exploration for it, I don't want to belittle myself here, but it is relatively straightforward. So the helium is produced very differently to hydrocarbons. So on a lot of occasions, the two are mixed, but they come from very different sources. So obviously hydrocarbons from organic material, but for the helium, it comes from actually radiogenic decay. So for the exploration, you look for some of the oldest rocks on the planet. So our project in the USA and also in Greenland have those. And within those old rocks, they're well endowed with uranium and thorium. When they decay, when they reach their half-life, then they start to create an alpha particle. That alpha particle is helium. So then all of a sudden, the uranium and thorium component of these old rocks is gone, but what's been replaced with is a lot of helium. And then what you need to then do is to break that rock open, create a trap and seal, and then the helium starts to accumulate in that, which is why it ends up, in many cases, in the same place as a hydrocarbon reservoir. But what we do is we look for reservoirs where they don't have that hydrocarbon potential, where the primary economic driver is the helium.
Right, and just coming back to the question around the team, because obviously it's pre-IPO, you've raised a little bit of money, you've had to kind of put people together. Can you tell us a little bit about who has joined you?
Yeah, sure. So with the team, we've raised just over 3 million Canadian to date privately, and the team it's a team that I know very well. So we've done this before. We've been in the helium industry now for almost a decade. So we're the founders behind the company Helium One, which is listed on the London Stock Exchange. So I was the co-founder along with our technical manager, Josh Blewett. So he's with Pulsar. As I say, I'm the CEO. And then the chairman of Pulsar is Neil Herbert. So he was also involved in that previous company as well. He's also been involved in many other things. So most recently, lithium, in the past with uranium. Had a great deal of success there. And then we have Stu Crow, who's also involved in the lithium space. But what he really brings to the table is the access to the North American capital markets. So with his company, Lake Resources, been successful there. So we also then have John Ferrier, another director of the company. He's the former CEO of Gulf Keystone. So that's an oil producer in Iraq, also listed on the London Stock Exchange. He brings that oil and gas background with him. And then with our team, underneath the board, the management team, we've got gas professionals and then local content in both the USA and in Greenland. So we have a very well established, capable team with a track record, and probably most importantly, we do understand helium because of that decade's experience.
Right. Okay. And then obviously with the kind of the Helium One experience, whatever that is, a £60 million company, I think, somewhere in that kind of region. Is what were the kind of lessons from there that you can apply here, if you don't mind?
Yeah, sure. No, look, Helium One is still a company that we've got a great deal of time for, and I wish them every success in Tanzania, and I think that it will come. But the lessons learned, well, we were the first ever helium exploration company to exist. So we really wrote the playbook. So we learned everything is the short answer. We were, as you said earlier, an esoteric commodity. So firstly, we had to get up to speed with it after making that discovery in Tanzania. What's it used for? What's the market? Who do we need to talk to? The end users, the distribution network. So we know that extremely well. We've met with every walk of life in the value chain of helium. So we have all those connections. The other thing is then to really to explain what it is, why people should care about it. But then I think that what I like about Pulsar in particular, and we'll get into the projects in more detail soon, but location. So for us being our flagship project Topaz, it's in Minnesota, it's in the USA, which is the world's largest helium market. That logistically helps incredibly. There's no doubt about it. So in terms of availability of equipment, but then also getting it to market, which is key with helium. Helium likes to leak. It likes to be buoyant and disappear out the atmosphere. So the closer you are to your market, great advantages that you have.
Okay, and talk to me about the size of the market. Obviously, you've got two projects, one in the US, Minnesota, and also over in Greenland. You got to get focused because obviously allocation of capital is important. Efficiency of that allocation of capital even more important. So is the US the core focus for you?
Yeah, look, it is the core focus. And there's a question that we get is our project there, it's being drilled. It's flowed 10.5% helium. And it appears to be under high pressure, so likely overpressured. So we have a fantastic asset there, and really that one is the key. The question is, why do we also have that second asset in Greenland? We realize it's a remote location, but the thing is that finding primary helium assets, these things are very rare. They're in Tanzania. You've got some in North America. Really, outside of that, there's not many places where you can find these. So with that project in Greenland, that's something that we generated in-house, and we proved that it's a primary helium system. So, of course, it makes sense to then have it. So we want to, use our expertise to have all these assets. But certainly considering that Minnesota, the Topaz project is more advanced, it's high grade, we're ready to go with that one. It makes sense for that being our focus, which it is completely.
Right. Okay. And so give me a sense of the size of the US market, if you can, or if you know that.
Yeah, the US market, so it's roughly about 40% of the world's total demand over there. So that's it. You've got then Asia, Europe. But with the USA supply, it used to be the world's largest supplier of helium. It's now been in decline for some time, and that will continue. And that's purely because of the age of its assets. It was extracting helium as a byproduct of natural gas. Those fields are now getting depleted. So now it starts to have to look abroad for the first time. So importing from either Canada or the Middle East. So that US market is prime for additional supply domestically.
Right. Okay. And I know you're keen to kind of get across your kind of green credentials in terms of with respect to the hydrocarbon component to this, or lack of hydrocarbon component to this. But you mentioned also the private rights, so the land, because a lot of companies that come on here talk about the need to deal with, whether it be First Nations or local sort of social license locally, etc. What does private mineral rights do for you as a business, and what does it allow you to do? And in terms of kind of protecting any kind of future issues or roadblocks that may come up.
Yeah, sure. So, with our project in Minnesota, so where the discovery was, where it was drilled, and it's worth mentioning that discovery was actually by chance by a former explorer that was there. They were looking for nickel. They didn't find it, but what they did do is unexpectedly hit a gas pocket, and they very diligently tested it and found that it was this primary helium system. So quite a bit of serendipity there. But with the private mineral rights, which we then negotiated the lease for, so what that does is means that in the USA, typically it's either private mineral rights, federal rights, or state rights. So with us being private, really we go through more or less the same process in terms of permitting. With which we're at an advanced stage for our drill program that we've got planned for later this year. We just still need to communicate with the federal, with the state, and the local county. So really, we're treating it as though we are on any other tract of land, going through the process. So it's been very robust. We've been very open in terms of First Nations. We've already been engaging with them as well. So look, really It's so new as well. Minnesota doesn't have a history of gas or oil at all. If you were to look at the playbook of oil or gas exploration in Minnesota, I think it's summed up in one sentence, which is "don't go there." So really, as the first mover, there is a lot of education, which we're more than happy to do. The reception's been excellent. But also in northern Minnesota, where we are, it's a very well-established mining jurisdiction. So you've got the largest iron ore mines of North America right on our doorstep, so less than 10 miles away. So we have that. The nearest major town or city is Duluth, which is a logistical hub for mining. So really, they're very familiar with it. But at the same time, we're up in northern Minnesota. It's an area of outstanding natural beauty. You've got the lakes there. So we're being incredibly careful and make sure that we don't, that we are the group that people want to have there of choice. So do it better than everyone else.
Okay, and talk to me about this, because it's very high percentage. Like you talk about 10.5%. This was drilled, I say, and found by accident back in 2011. So and then obviously. And I think it flowed for 4 days or something, so without losing too much pressure. So it's all kind of indicative of hopefully what you want to find, but you've now got to get on with your own process now. So what does that look like? You've raised sort of just shy of $3 million. What do you do with it?
So what we do, I mean, with that discovery that was done was made in 2011. So with some of the people that were involved there, they're now with Pulsar, so they're part of our team. And it's fascinating sitting down and with them and recounting that experience. What was it like when they unexpectedly hit this gas pocket? And so the words that keep on being repeated to me, the descriptive words that they use are, it was terrifying and it was violent, which at the time would be obviously terrifying and violent for them. But from an output point of view of a gas, that's exactly what you want to hear. I mean, magnificent. I mean, what a flow rate that must have been. So it blew the core barrel out of the drill string. It was open for 4 days with no obvious loss in pressure. They then got a wind gauge, one that we might say have at our homes type thing, to try and capture the velocity of it. That instrument was capable of recording up to 150 kilometers an hour, which it achieved, and then got destroyed by the gas coming out. So it's obviously in excess of that. But what they did is they took the gas samples to find out, is it combustible? That was their largest concern. And so they took them one was to a university in Toronto, the other one was to a laboratory, commercial lab. And they both came back and they agreed with this 10.5% and that the gas was not combustible, that the hydrocarbons were there in very much trace quantities. They then sealed off the well, they pumped it filled with concrete, and then that was it, done. But what we found is that obviously was magnificent. It was music to our ears. But then this is a new environment. There is no other recollection of any gas in this particular part of the USA. So that prompted us to then look at it regionally, what's to play. And what we found is like anything in life, when you start digging deeper, then you start to find these things. And what we found that actually there were quite a few drill holes, could be for mineral exploration, it could be for water bores in Minnesota, where they had encountered gas and it was non-combustible. Now, the lion's share of those were not analyzed at all, but one drill hole, only one, was analyzed for helium, and that came back with 2% helium. And that's located 160 kilometers to the southwest of our project area. So what that's really prompted us to do is say, look, we're not looking at an isolated occurrence here. We're not looking at a one-hit wonder. This is very much a provincial play here. We really think this is a new jurisdiction for helium. And it has all the right, and I won't bore you with the geological ingredients, but they're all there. It's just that nobody had looked for it.
Right, but here's the thing, the drill bit tells all. So you can go and drill holes, and that's expensive, but it'll tell you very quickly whether it's still there or what you've got, indeed. Or you can go and do, as most explorers do, geophysics and try and work out roughly what you've got underneath. So how do you go about it? Because this is the IPO is imminent. We'll talk about that in a second.
Sure.
You've got to go through the phases to show people that you're kind of in control of a process and that it is yielding results, and in a way that they can understand what it is that you're going to sort of end up with. Because like all commodities, you've got to show grade and scale to this thing. So how do you lay that out?
For us, it's all about this year. It's all about news flow. So to walk the walk, effectively. So what we've got coming up. So it's getting back to the beginning of your question, geophysics, drilling. For us, it's both. It's a combination. So what we've already done with our project in Minnesota is we've done an airborne geophysical survey. So that was accomplished late last year. That's given us a great insight into the project. What we've also done is, going back to my earlier comments about this 2% helium 160 kilometers away, we're the first mover in this area. So what we've done is we've put in a huge number of applications to expand our footprint, to effectively monopolize our position there. But what's really nice is that a lot of drilling has already been done in this broader area. So one method that's used quite extensively, particularly in North America for helium exploration, is drilling shallow holes, drilling water bore holes, so they can then sample the aquifer and gauge if there's anything coming up from depth. For us, in our area of interest, there are over 6,000 water bores that have already been drilled. So one thing that we're doing, and we've already got organized, and that is going to start next quarter, is to go off and analyze all of those water bores. Take a portable instrument with us that will give us real-time helium analysis. So we have that in our favor. The next one that's prior to drilling, so we're looking at drilling in the third quarter of this year. But prior to that as well, we're also conducting a seismic survey. But the seismic survey we're using is called, it's a passive seismic survey. So rather than setting off charges or using the thumper trucks, we use this passive seismic survey where you leave nodes in the field in a grid array. And then because we're so close to the iron ore mines, there's consistent blasting there all the time. That provides us with the shock waves that we need to the shallow depth where the helium discovery was, which is about 550 meters depth. So we get that data. So then when we do drill later this year, which we've already started rig inspections, groundworks have already started, then we have absolutely every data set we can have. Plus we've got a discovery probably within 50 meters of where we're drilling to de-risk it as best as humanly possible.
Okay. So, and if I look out for the rest of this year, we talk about lots of news flow. What do you think that needs to look like for people to actually understand how you're getting on? Because again, not too many people know much about helium, right? It's in terms of some of the other commodity choices that they've got in terms of where they place their money into these equities. What would good look like to you? What would success look like to you by the end of this year?
Success to me would look like, so obviously with this drill hole, this appraisal well that we're drilling. So to confirm the helium concentration, and you'd be a bit upset if all of a sudden it changed overnight. But there's that. The flow rates, confirming what are they. And then once we finish the drill hole, we'll then be moving off the rig, and then we'll be putting in all the testing equipment, pressure tests and so on, finding out what's the size of that reservoir. But really, we're quite fortunate. With that concentration of 10.5%, that means that your overall reservoir it doesn't have to be as large as, say, some of the other companies. We've got smaller, lower concentrations of helium there. So really, we're blessed by that. Was it grade is king, right? So we have that working in our favor. But what, for me, is that the best success we could have is to really replicate that hole, but with the additional data that they were not able to gather in 2011 because they didn't have the right rig there. To then go off and then give that to our resource analysts. So we use Sproul, give it to them, get a very nice update to our resource that will then hopefully be sufficient to then say, okay, we're now moving from this appraisal. We're now looking at, what is the likely production scenario based on successful drilling. That to me is really the milestone that I want to achieve this year. We're doing everything to de-risk it to get to that point. But one thing that you won't hear from me until that we've completed the drilling is what is a production scenario going to look like. I mean, we're not going to put the cart before the horse. We're going to wait for that absolute data. And then when it's in hand, then we'll then be able to tell the market exactly what it is that we're looking at and what the company can achieve.
Right, okay. And for people to get involved, they're going to need to be able to buy your stock. So IPO scheduled for Q2. Mm-hmm. You're running out of time.
We are running out of time. So yeah, we're looking at doing a straight IPO onto the TSX Venture Exchange, the TSXV. So we like Canada. Reason is that we're in North America, so it makes sense. There's also quite a few other helium companies there which provide great comparisons. So there's that. But look, it is imminent. So what I would suggest is anyone who is wanting to get involved with the IPO, due to Canadian securities laws, can't talk about it now, but please get in contact. So the easiest way to get in contact is, well, either via Crux Investor, of course, or what we could do is our website, pulsarhelium.com, email address, which is connect@pulsarhelium.com. We're on Twitter, we're on Instagram, basically Google Pulsar Helium and you'll find us.
Tom, thanks very much.
Pleasure. Thank you very much. Cheers, mate.